It's time to open the door to our minds and take a look inside. Hi, I'm Dottie the Psychic, and this episode may cause madness. Now, doesn't that sound like fun? Let's take a look at a bit of history, shall we? After all, it would be a shame to forget all the blood, sweat, and entrails our ancestors put into their fine work.
It's part of basic human instinct to derive meaning from our surroundings. But it takes culture to truly develop the skill of interpreting dreams and visions, observing the flight pattern of birds, and reading animal innards. These were all seen as legitimate forms of divination in the Roman classic era.
The good old days. Unfortunately, things have become a bit more vegan friendly in modern day. But if I get 10 or more likes on this video, I may be moved to go into more detail about the types of divination I've come across. You may leave a suggestion below if there's a specific type of divination you'd like to learn more about. This would also be a good time to subscribe. It's the red button. So let's get to the meat of the subject, with what I consider the 3 predictive ways that we receive information. First of all, intuition, or I like to refer to as the original instant messenger. Reading, because sometimes the dark forces have to be sought out. And last, and least used, logic, because sometimes it's easier just to figure it out.
Some people have a tendency to be in the right place at the right time and can't tell you how or why. Others receive complex visions and accompanying audio. Intuition can come through any sense, even smell. It's commonly reported when communing with the spirits to smell something associated with that spirit. Every now and again, I smell cigars and, rum. Sometimes it feels like an old school radio or TV. When the weather's great, you can get any channel you want except for maybe Skinamax or HBO. You always gotta pay for those little extras. On a bad day, or like a day at work, it feels a little shoddy. Instead of maybe being turned off, it maybe just pointed in the wrong direction or a different direction. Personally, I believe that everybody has a little bit of this intuition, but there's plenty of things that cause it to be blocked off or disrupted. I understand why people with a natural ability have a tendency to believe that most people are clueless. They are. However, I also believe that divination is something that is developed over multiple lifetimes. So if you have an interest, but you don't feel like you have a talent, then develop the skill. Start with reading. And remember, it's okay if a system doesn't work. So reading. There's almost as many ways to read as there are people doing it. And this is an interpretation of an external energy, usually through symbols. It can be as direct as a palm reading, or as indirect as a psychic card reading over a hotline, which is something I have done, and I will never do again. If I have to go back to the hotline, I'm doing dirty talk. But if you think you've never done any reading before, have you ever flipped the coin? Do this right now. Why don't you call it in the air with a yes or no put a yes or no question in your mind, and I'm going to flip this coin, and if you get right, then the answer is yes. If you get it wrong, then the answer is no. Tails it is. It's easy to see how the lines between intuition and reading can become blurry. Intuition can blend beautifully with logic. It's not so easy, on the other hand, to bridge reading and logic. However, I know they both work.
I know in the spiritual community that logic is often considered a 4-letter word, but it it's actually 5. And I don't want you to think that I'm siding with the charlatans and non-believers, because this simply isn't the case. I believe that the parlor tricks of the hot-cold reads are a stain on what it means to be a psychic. I just simply think that illogical conclusions shouldn't be discarded just because they make sense.
For example, if somebody comes up to me and they're covered in bruises and wearing long sleeves and sunglasses at night, and they tell me that it's not their lover's fault, even though this is the 3rd or 4th time that this has happened and it's never going to happen again, I don't have to contact your dead relative whose name starts with a J, or your fairy godmother to tell you that it's probably going to happen again.
That idiot you're screwing is an abusive addict who's not going to change their ways as long as you're supporting them. There are a lot of reasons why somebody would actively reject a message like this. And sometimes it only takes a big jolt. Like a total stranger reading your life like a cheap novel while your best friends turn the term "I told you so" into the theatrical event of the scene. I told you so, I told you so. You know who told you so? I think I told you so. You know, I know, you know, I told you so, I told you so. Yes, I did. Oh, yes, I did. I told you so. So many times I told you so. You know that I told you so. I told you so. Sometimes even that doesn't work. A person has to be in a place where they can receive that kind of message before they will receive that sort of message. If you're a friend and somebody who's in that situation, try to be compassionate. It's not like they want to live like that. So there are people who will more passively reject the message. And it's not because they reject that message outright, but it doesn't fall within the parameters of what they believe. It can be entertaining to argue with people that reject your ideas. But if you really want to reach them, you got to meet them where they are. Just telling somebody they're wrong is kind of a bitch move, and it rarely actually works. If you can't talk them down, walk away or change the subject. Because the more you argue with them, the more correct they think they are in their opinion. We've already kind of touched on the subject of static. Sometimes people aren't rejecting the message at all. It's just got to make it through all the static. And since we've already kind of touched on the subject, let's look into it a little bit more.
Let's start with a vague and cryptic study of symbology. How the hell is a raven like a writing desk? The best practice in many cases is just to spit it out, then figure it out. If you're reading for someone else, don't try to translate the message before you convey it. Disrupting the flow can cause you to lose the connection. Thanks, Luther. That's why so many people have dream journals. It may take time to figure out the symbols. Also, don't just run for the interpretation book. Carl Jung broke down symbolism, specifically dream symbolism, into 3 categories: personal, cultural, and archetypal. Personal being the foremost prevalent should be exhausted first. Intuition, dreams, and that creative spark are totally personal. It would therefore make sense that symbols would have to make sense to you.
Consulting a friend when you're stuck is one thing, but but don't allow other people to confuse your thoughts. It's an all-around good idea to keep other people's ideas in their place and their names out of your mouth. Jesus, your mother-in-law, the neighbor, that crazy witch on YouTube, and the man from Florida are terrible reasons to screw up your life, fall off track, or generally make an ass of yourself?
Should never be afraid to look in the mirror. If you look in the mirror and you see anything but your true self, then it's time to do a self-evaluation. Unless it's this mirror. This mirror shows me many things, including that I've skipped right over this bit that explains the mirror.
It's paramount to find the reason why. It is only by facing our fear that we can truly learn to fly. Don't allow fear to make you run and hide. Command your space and control your mind. If you do get a case of the creepy crawlies, don't naturally assume it's something evil. It is, however, a good idea to learn some basic grounding and some self-protection. But remember, this is a beginning video, so if things get out of hand, reach out for help. Don't let things fester. Beware the prophecy of failure, for it will fulfill itself if fed. We all get hung up on occasion. A lot of the issues that I've talked about in this video are ones that I've gotten hung up on. We all get hung up on occasion. But I won't willfully be blind. And foresight, even with logic, is like any other talent, it has to be fostered.
Meditation may seem to be a bit overplayed, but learning to focus is a valuable skill in any situation. There's no reason for meditation to be boring. Setting the mood can really help you power through 10 minutes of sitting still. The same is true for journaling. And there's the added advantage of seeing what you've accomplished. Check out some of my other videos. Hands down, the most effective way to maintain proper grounding and protection is to get yourself a life. Go for a walk. Pay your bills. Socialize with interesting people. May want to limit the drug use. Be mindful of what you're inviting into your house.
Go out and do your own research. I'm a college flunky. You've got to do your own research. Don't do something crazy based off of what you hear on YouTube or read out of a weird book. If it doesn't work in the world you're living in, then it doesn't really work. With that in mind, you can think of the simple act of putting two and two together, as it were, is just as divine as trancing out and reading smoke signs. As long as it gets you to where you want to be in life. That's the point, right?
You can check out our cause of the month on my website at dottiethepsychic.com. And you can also check me out on Patreon, Dottie the Psychic. I'm easy to find. Don't forget our cause of the month is the 4-H. Safe travel and much profit to you.